Tesla didn't just turn a page last week, it started a whole new book. With the launch of Robotaxi, the game has changed. So what should shareholders expect now? Next Wednesday, Tesla will report vehicle deliveries. Does that even matter anymore? We're now in the era of software margins, recurring revenue, and autonomous fleets. So what are the real catalysts from here? The moment could mark the beginning of a very different kind of rally. We've got the bulls here with us today. I've got Tesla Boomer Mama, the Queen, Alexandra Merz. We've got Cern Basher, the Bot Bull. And joining us this week is Matt Smith, the Financial Bull. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, Herbert.
Hey, Herbert. Thanks for having us on.
Hi, Herbert.
All right. So big week. Of course, Sunday was the big launch. People thought that the stock would jump the next day. It did jump by about, I think 6% or something like that, maybe 8%. But then it, just kind of fizzled away. Having said that, institutional analysts pretty well across the board give it high marks, and they said that this was a big milestone, that Tesla is actually now going to, Robotaxis here, and it was very successful. We even had Alexander Potter come out and say that he thinks that this is, that Tesla will not only win the Robotaxi market, but actually the auto market itself. On the other hand, of course, you have the mass media. They came out hard, just saying stupid things that are not true about what happened, picking little things. So what's happening with the stock right now, and what do you think is going to happen to the stock by the end of this year? Why don't we start with you, Matt? The company and the product. I don't look at the quarterly stock movement.
A very realistic bull, questioning certain decisions.
The rational bull. We enjoy listening to bears.
We're looking for the red flags. You're supposed to react.
It's just worth reminding people how big this upside opportunity is. Yeah, so lot to unpack there. I mean, I think the most hilarious thing is all these journalists who didn't even get invited to have a Robotaxi ride, trying to make up all these little nitpicky things of why it was a failed launch. I'm like, you didn't even experience it because we already know what the headline would have been, even if you were in there. So just a kudos to Tesla for the way that they handled this rollout, and for all the testers there for keeping the media on the sideline where they belong. So lot going on with the stock. One of the questions is, does the production and deliveries even matter anymore? I think we're in this weird spot right now where with the current valuation, it clearly isn't justified by the car business alone. A lot of investors are anticipating some value and some future earnings potential from Robotaxis and from Optimus. So there's some amount of that premium baked in. So like a 5% miss or a 10% miss on earnings estimates, it really shouldn't have a significant impact in the stock, since the car value is already, I would say, discounted quite a bit, or at least it's not the thing driving the overall enterprise value of the company. That said, it still does matter, I think, as an indicator of the company's demand more than anything. But I think I would say we're sort of in the death throes of the production and delivery report mattering going forward. I think much more impactful catalysts coming down the pike for this year are how quickly do they roll out to other cities, and how quickly does Austin expand. So we've got this, kind of group of testers which are going to be going back to their home states in the next couple, days. They're going to have to rely on some more locals to use the Robotaxis within Austin. But then how quickly do they expand the fleet from roughly a dozen right now to dozens and maybe hundreds, and then to other cities? If that rollout happens fairly quickly, I think that could be a pretty big catalyst for the stock. But a lot of questions around execution, I think, right now.
Matt, you said that there's built into the auto business, and then it's built in the Robotaxi and the bots. What is let's say the stock is at $330. How much of that is the auto?
Man, I wish I had my model refreshed. But roughly, when I've done the math recently, it was maybe like $75 on the energy side of the business, maybe $150 or so on the car business. So, that puts you at like $225. So then you're at $100 of the partial credit for autonomy and Optimus. Which I think full credit for autonomy is going to be several trillion, and full credit for Optimus is going to be like tens of trillions in the long run, would be my view.
What a great answer. I knew you knew all that. Let's go to you, Cern. I know you're
not investment advice.
Not, Cern, you're absolutely a long-term, somebody looks at the long-term. I've had many shows with you. You've mapped it out. The launch happened, Cern. What has happened to your forecast? What has happened to just your thinking about what the stock might do in the next 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's really happened with my forecast because of the launch. The fact that it's launched, though, is certainly exciting, and we can now actually look at some of the forecasted numbers, and hopefully we'll see them develop over time. But I think just to expand on Matt's point a little bit, and this relates to the short-term movement in the stock, we've got sort of two camps on Wall Street, and the largest camp by far still considers Tesla an auto company. They're still baffled by Tesla's valuation because they look at near-term earnings. And so that camp, I think, is going to be disappointed in Q2. They may be discouraged about Q3 and Q4 and even next year. So that camp tends to be pretty loud. But you've got what I think is more important, and I think we see that today, as Matt just articulated with the stock price, this future version of Tesla, which the auto business will be just a tiny part of, right? The growth businesses and energy and the AI businesses, Robotaxi and Optimus. To the extent that investors look past this year's earnings and even next year's earnings, it starts to look really exciting for the potential of those businesses. And so it's just kind of a question of which camp wins the day on any given day in the market, or who shows up after the earnings call and does, bids the stock up or down. But that's really the way you have to think about it and understand it, is that we've got a significant camp still on Wall Street that thinks of Tesla just as a car company, and they are going to until the revenue from Robotaxi starts to flow in. And it's not going to be material to the business for some time. So we're going to have this battle between the two camps for some time yet.
I asked Dan Ives, I just interviewed him. That interview will drop this weekend. And I asked him this question. I said, and I'll ask you guys the same thing. You start, Alexandra. What percentage of institutional analysts, actually I said, what percentage of investors are willing to invest prior to an event occurring? And what percentage will wait until they see the actual earnings occur? And he said that he's seen a change. Previously, he said it was something like 70-30, 70% of investors would not invest until they see it. But now he thinks it's flipped. So only 30% are still holding on until I actually see the earnings, which is kind of a big statement. What do you think about that, Alexandra?
I put that a little bit in question, seeing how many institutions have gone out of the stock. I saw many institutions coming in November, December after the elections because they felt that Elon being so close to President Trump was, a push for Tesla. I mean, if you want to be in any stock in that situation, there's only Tesla as a stock available. And then further they went out of it again. So I still feel they are very short-term oriented. And I think the stock price action these last 3 days, both the 10% increase and now the flattening out, just show how short-term everybody is. I mean, if anybody expected now, the second wave and the geofence doubling and whatever, daily news, well, they're wrong. They're just wrong. And it just takes time. But on the good side is I got about an hour ago from my Webull account manager an invitation to a webinar Monday morning at 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock Eastern, of a webinar by Adam Jonas, Morgan Stanley, where he talks about bots, bots, who's going to take the market. I obviously can't tell you what he's going to say because it's not Monday yet, but the simple fact that they are now reaching out to retail means they have already reached out to institutions. They're doing this roadshow. They're educating about bots. So the education moment is happening, right? What we have studied like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, is finally brought to the masses by these analysts and by these banks and brokers. So I think that's where the shift is happening. Not really yet in long-term investment of the institutions, but in educating the market about what I think primary role Tesla will have in the coming years.
It's just so weird. Come on, guys. We had a friggin' launch. This isn't anymore this story stock. This is an actual service with an actual paid, they showed that it works.
Yeah,
it's every single day. It's actually still happening. People can
of course, but Herbert,
hail a
it's
ride
10, 11
today.
cars. It's 10, 11 cars. It's geofence. The problem of human attention is that once it works, now the human attention is on the little few moments where it doesn't work, right? So you can't. News today have a shelf life of 2 minutes. People are not willing to, carry on news, think it through, and go the long route. So the Sunday is over. It was a lot of fun for a lot of us, and I think the fact that the press has been mainly cut off probably didn't help, but made us very happy, which is good enough as a reason. But now it's just, there's no news coming, no follow-up news coming very quickly. There may be next week the delivery of the first car autonomously, but the big news, the big waves of news, and just let's be fair. When do you read about Waymo in the news? Only when they have problems, when they get stuck, when LiDAR doesn't work and they get into a tree or they get into an obstacle, right? So that's the difficulty with the technology that rolls out slowly, is you lose the attention of people that are not like us, constantly in this stock and constantly, highly motivated to follow it. And you actually lose it to the short-term sensationalism of the few moments it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be proven right. I've been saying for the last several months that when Robotaxi launches, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen to the stock because of Robotaxi until the new year, January, February, March. That's when it'll impact. Because it is going to be dip-toe. It's going to be small groups and nobody will care until they see.
Why would it be Q1? Why would it be Q1? I actually think it's going to be Q4 next year, 2020.
Yeah. Well, the actual date was Cern. Cern put together a whole analysis, and he said that starting Q2 of next year, Cern, I'm speaking for you, starting Q2 next year, each quarter from then on, it's going to be sequential growth. And that's what happened to NVIDIA. Only when you had a Q2 earnings or quarter earnings, it kept growing. That's when people start to realize, oh, crap, I better invest now.
Yeah, at that point, if that's the case, or if that proves to be true, it becomes very difficult for Wall Street to ignore what's happening with the company, right? For now, they can easily point their finger and say, "Oh, look, earnings expectations coming down. Q1 was bad. Oh, Q2 is even worse." From a Wall Street perspective, where you're looking at just the numbers, there's not much to get excited about, right? But at some point, everything will come into an alignment. We'll start to see nice growth in Robotaxi, and the numbers will support that as well. And perhaps Matt has some ideas in terms of when that might happen.
Well, I was just going to say, you and I have modeled this separately. We didn't compare notes or anything, Cern, and I was actually coming up with very similar numbers where it's almost immaterial until Q2 of next year, and then it's like even then it's like only a little bit material, but then by Q3 it starts to become a bit of a driver, and by Q4 even more so. Obviously, that's highly contingent on how quickly they roll out to new cities and expand the fleet. So. Fair amount of assumptions in there, but I think we're at least kind of thinking about it the same way, where the next year, let's say, very minimal impact to the actual earnings. But I think the market, to your earlier point, Herbert, about do analysts and institutional investors want to see it like fully baked in and actually see the earnings report, or are they willing to buy a little bit ahead of the news? Well, when you see the Robotaxi network launch to 5 new cities, that you can do some pretty simple math on what impact that's going to have to the bottom line. And then more importantly, it gives you an idea of the pace of expansion, which you can then use to, model out. And probably these analysts, I'm guessing, don't have numbers quite where Cern and I have them in terms of, let's say, 2027 numbers. But if the rollout goes about as we're modeling, then they're going to be forced to raise their earnings estimates, and that might cause some buying. So I don't think any impact to earnings in a meaningful way for the next year, but that doesn't mean the investors might not front run it if the rollout goes well.
When do you think that will happen, Matt? When would enough investors front run it so you don't have to wait till Q2, Q4, Q3 next year?
Well, I mean, it's very contingent on how quickly Tesla actually expands the network. So, I mean, if what I'm modeling, which sounds like it's pretty similar to what Cern is modeling, is accurate, where you get like maybe tens of thousands of vehicles by the end of this year, and hundreds of thousands, but not a million by the end of next year.
Wait, tens of thousands by the end of this year?
Yeah.
That's a lot, guys.
I'd have to double check my numbers on that, but that off my memory, I think that's where I have it. But it's not really that much when you think of how many Teslas has available. There's some rumors that they've got this big lot in Austin that they've been coming in and out of that has probably 1,000, I would guess. And so I mean, if you expand to a few other cities and expand to really meaningful levels. You like, how many Ubers are in Austin? I would imagine, quite a few. And so you don't have to just compete with Waymo. You're actually at that point, you're competing with Uber. So, the numbers that I have, the numbers that Cern have will be wrong, but I think the most important metric is just how quickly the ramp goes. And if we're approximately right, then I would think by latter half of this year, maybe Q4 or something like that, the market will start to pick up on it.
And then, of course, the other thing that will transpire into next year is Optimus, right? So we have a whole nother new product line to get excited about, and the volume potential for that is even larger than Robotaxi. And so, again, we've got two camps in Wall Street. One camp only gets excited when the numbers are printed on the earnings report, right? And then you do have a significant other camp, including retail investors, that allows themselves to look forward into the future and bid up the stock ahead of the numbers being printed in an earnings report. And it's just a daily battle between those two camps, right? Neither camp is necessarily right or wrong. It's just that one camp is willing to look out a little bit more into the future, and the other camp is far more conservative, and they just wait for the numbers to be printed, right? Only in hindsight, I guess, is it clear, which camp was better positioned, but that's just the way they operate.
All right, so we covered so far Tesla stock. We need to talk about Robotaxi. And I'll tell you now, I'm going to nail you guys, Matt and Cern. I'm going to ask you the metrics that you expect Tesla to basically announce on the Q2 conference call, like a month from now, regarding Robotaxi. So you better start penciling that down if you hadn't already. In the meantime, though, I think that what just happened just now, and I'll talk to you about that, Alexandra, is a couple people that are high-level executives were either let go, we don't know, or they left Tesla. Elon seems like he's got he's back laser focused. He's back in the company. If you just look at all his posts, who's he's following, his reposts, it's really focused on Tesla. He made a post recently about Optimus version 3. He met with the team and he's very happy with what he saw. But this was a bit of a shock for some people. Omad Afshar, he was a top-level executive who's actually part of the office of the CEO that was reporting directly to Elon, and he's left. Some people think that he actually was fired, but he is in charge of, what is it now? He was promoted last year to oversee sales and manufacturing operations in North America and Europe. That could have been a little bit too big for his britches here, but he left. So, he's been here for 8 years, so I personally don't think that's a big deal. But what do you think? What's going on, Alexandra?
Yeah, so Matt arrived in 2017, just prior to production hell, and he was next to Elon all through that time. I recall an interview he did, or I think a post he did, where he explained that Elon nearly missed his brother's wedding during that time because, he was with him in the factory on the floor that day, and then at one point they just told him, now you go and get to your brother's wedding, right? And I think since then, Omad has been the eyes on the floor for Elon. Whatever Elon else was doing, Omad was the person who, represented him, reported directly back to him, was the key contact between Tesla and Elon. And can you imagine 8 years of going through that, 8 years, and especially the last, I can't even say it, especially the last 6 months, because every 6 months were just crazy, right? But the last 6 months were as crazy as other 6 months. And now here we are, and we rolled out the Robotaxi. And contrary to what all the bears want to tell you, it was a success, right? You can always pin it down to this thing didn't work like it should, and what did they hold in that hand, and whatever BS. But it was a real success. And, I think I would be surprised that he got fired. I don't think so. I think these two men have a very close relationship. There were moments where Omad was sent to SpaceX because there were things that had to be handled there. Omad was on the team at Twitter that he pulled over initially to streamline Twitter and become X. Omad had so many key roles, and he's actually personally an investor in XAI, which are very few personal investors in there. So I just can't believe that there would have been a clash. And then, but what do I know? People are people. But in any case, I think this is typical for certain moments in the cycle of Tesla. There is a milestone. You work your butt off to get there. And then when it's over, you question yourself, is this the moment to leave? Is this the moment to take a break? Is this the moment, to go for other things? And I think that's what happened here. I don't know what happened to the HR lady. I'm sorry, I don't recall her name as well, who left as well. But in HR, Tesla's HR has been a roller coaster. There have been lots of executives heading HR, and I'm not saying everything is perfect. I don't think so. I think it's a rough climate to be a Tesla in charge of HR, because there's just so much ambition there, but also laws and rules, and it just clashes from time to time. So this is one of those rinse moments. Not saying they're glorious. I always hate it when they also have to cut 10% of the workforce, whatever. I feel for everybody who has to leave in those moments. I don't like it. But on the other hand, it's just necessary. It's good business strategy to do so. And we'll move on. And Omad will be back in another role somewhere else. And maybe it's in an Elon company, or maybe it's not. But I don't think there's anything to be read into this.
I do get the feeling that Elon came back after doing Doge. He's focused. He hit this major milestone. He was focused on that. And there's going to be some big new things, or just making sure things happen, right? He came in and did the launch of Robotaxi. We have turned the page. This is the new book. We're well into the new book now. And so that's why Tesla is no longer just a vehicle company. They're making revenues. They actually did get their first revenues, subscription revenue. This is a whole new business line. How come I didn't see you guys write things down? Matt and Cern, I asked you, what are the metrics that we should expect, the new metrics that they're going to start reporting on that they never did before?
Well, just before we answer that, I would throw out the idea that if you have a guy that's the head of sales,
Yeah,
and you're coming into a point where every car that you make can either be sold or put into your fleet, why do you need a head of sales anymore?
you made that point last, blew my mind.
Right.
Explain that a little bit, because I thought that was brilliant. Yeah.
Well, we're not at that stage yet, but they can't just take every vehicle and put it into the Robotaxi fleet. But at some point, every vehicle that comes off the line, right, it's either sold to a customer, or if it's not, Tesla just includes it in their own fleet, the Robotaxi fleet, right? That's where they'll be able to be in a year or so, maybe 2 years. And that's nice, because now you can run the factories at their optimal state, whatever that is for each factory. You don't have to worry about customer demand. Now, it's not perfect, because not every vehicle they sell is an ideal Robotaxi vehicle, but just in general, it will allow them to more optimally run their factories, and that's really positive. So since I deflected the question, I'll turn it over to Matt for his ideas.
Yeah. I didn't see him write down stuff. Come on, Matt.
All right, well, I'm going to take a page out of Cern's book and talk about something else first.
And then push it back down.
Which is, I just want to correct my number. So I said 10,000 by year end. I went back and checked my model.
Yes.
I was actually only at 500. So,
there you go.
You get to 10,000 by like Q2 of 26. And then by the end of 26, my number was 112,000. So my old memory's going in my old age. So just wanted to correct that for the
extra
record.
kid, that's what it does to you. Okay. Once you're past 7 kids, that the 8th kid does that to you. Okay. So
we had one of those nights last night where like every kid decided
I don't want to hear.
to climb
I don't want to hear
into
what
the
happened.
bed.
I don't want to hear.
Point is, I'm a little sleep deprived. But metrics,
making the 9th kid, is that what you're talking about?
Finally, no, the kids were climbing into the bed. They would.
Okay.
Yeah. It was anyways, I will answer your question now after that satisfying detour. So, I don't think Tesla's going to suddenly break out a new revenue line item, for example. We're only talking about a couple $1,000 of revenue potentially with Robotaxis. I mean, we've got like a week, and it's at $4.20. So, some simple math, like you're probably not talking about more than $10,000 of revenue, which it's going to be at extremely negative gross margins right now too, because you've got the safety driver, you got that whole control center, and just such a very limited revenue base that the margins are going to be nothing to write home about at this point. So it doesn't make sense for them to actually break out financially any of this information. I suspect they'll just bury it in services. But what I do think they'll do is share some highlights. How many rides were given. How many maybe something like how many vehicles were in the fleet. maybe some safety metrics would be kind of interesting, miles driven. So I think they'll share some very select kind of, KPIs that won't tie them down into needing to report on this going forward. So, I think at some point when it becomes a more meaningful contributor to their overall financial performance, maybe a year from now, as we were, kind of talking about before.
1 year from now?
Yeah.
The reason why I'm nailing you on this is because, true or not true, when they do these earnings report every quarter, before they used to say vehicle production delivery, and then they now said here's energy also. Mm-hmm. So now everybody out there has to call Tesla a car and energy company. Well, when you start adding in these, metrics, then that's when they need to call you a robotaxi company, an AI company.
Yeah, so I think they'll want to do that when they've got something good to show. And, I think obviously the Q2 numbers aren't going to be anything to write home about since it was launched with literally 1 week to go in the quarter. But over time, it's going to continue to grow. The fleet will become more and more meaningful. And then just from a, financial reporting perspective, at some point, it'll be so meaningful that they'll have to, strip it out and call it out separately. So my suspicion would be that it's sometime around Q2 next year that they'll do that.
Boring. Okay.
What do you want from a nerd?
I want nerds give me like detailed line items of exactly, meters per second and metrics and dollars per hour or whatever. I want to hear it.
Meters per second?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just making it up. See, I'm not.
You are excommunicated from the nerd club if your meters per second is your robotaxi metric.
Yeah. No, I know. That was dumb.
Actually, that could be an interesting number at some point. But yeah. Herbert, if you want my 5-minute answer, it's not going to be nearly as good as my, my 5-hour or my 5-day answer. So, just take that with a grain of salt.
Okay, well, let's do a show on that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you a whole week to study it and do a report for me. Just kidding. Put you to homework. Yeah.
But just to extend on what Matt said, I mean, until a business is material, companies don't need to break it out.
But okay, right? Sorry, I'm interrupting you. But I mean, like, if this is a change in business, I'm no longer this business, I'm now this business. I want to communicate that even if the numbers are small.
Yeah, and I think they will in the comments. I think that Elon will address it. I think that there'll be plenty of questions on the earnings call. So that for me is going to be much more interesting than anything that's in the slide deck that they announce. I'm not expecting anything in the production and delivery report. No mention at all about Robotaxi and that. And the earnings call, I think that that's going to be key in terms of what they talk about in the earnings call. There's going to be there'll be comments that they'll talk about the rollout and where it's at, and hopefully between now and late July, almost a month from now, when the earnings report is, quite a few developments will have occurred. We'll see some expansion of the geofenced area. We'll see more vehicles, et cetera. So we'll hopefully get some indication before that. And then, of course, analysts, hopefully they ask a whole bunch of questions about robotaxi, and not about
how come you don't have LiDAR?
Exactly. Yeah. Beyond that, let's please get beyond that. Yeah.
All right. Let's go to. I'll ask you guys, all the panel here, to answer the same question. Robotaxi launch. Tell me exactly what's going to happen next. What's your guess of which month? Next month. What are we going to see? Let's start with you, Alexandra.
Yeah, the next 3-4 months are going to be interesting. So obviously we're going to have beginning of July the delivery numbers, and towards end of July the financials for Q2. So that's an interesting point. I do believe we'll see the more affordable car, but this is me, pure speculations. I don't have any insight, being presented and immediately deliverable beginning of October.
Everybody's expecting it in June. Yeah.
Well, June is a bit late. We're on the 27th now. So June is probably gone. I mean, we always knew it was delayed, right? We knew there were a couple of delays. And yes, we knew that. We
did not know that
3-4 months ago. Oh, yes, we did. We discussed that in one of the shows with Jeff, where he said, there are always going to be a couple of delays. And so it was the last were August-ish. I do believe if quarter end numbers are still important, which is a big if, right? Maybe they are not important anymore. But if quarter end numbers are still important, there is no need to push it out before September is over. Now, if quarter-end numbers nobody cares anymore about, which I'm the first one to be happy about because I think it's completely ridiculous, all these quarter-end situations in the phase we're currently, then it could be earlier. But if that's still important, I think you don't want to Osborne it and push it out like, event and immediately deliverable, meaning they will build the lines and have the first cars ready to be delivered then. And I think that would actually make a lot of sense. You all remember those videos with the car driving around that looked shorter and that was a bit covered. I noticed something there, and again, I may be completely off. I think it doesn't have a glass roof. And that would be an extreme good way of saving money, making it lighter, hence less batteries. It would bring a lot of economy into this new form factor. So that could be it. I could be wrong. If that is it, I think they would launch it in October. And then my normal topic, obviously, is the proxy and then the shareholder meeting with the new compensation plan for Elon, if they get it finally together. And now that June is over, that means we'll have the proxy earliest in July, meaning the shareholder meeting will be earliest in September. And it could just be that shareholder meeting and presentation of that new car coincide.
Gotcha. I was actually asking about Robotaxi, but that was a great answer. That was good. So let's continue that. No, but tell me about Robotaxi now. We've got, I think, 11 vehicles has been identified in the last several days. We've got maybe 20 people with early access users, but the app is live. Everything's working.
There are more now. Since yesterday evening, new people received invites. So what's your
thinking of how this is going to scale over the next months?
Okay, so I do believe they're now, having more and more people experiment it. As the interventions get ironed out, get smoothed out, I do believe they'll roll it out. So it will become a higher geofenced area. It will become more and more users that can get it. Maybe it will get to the point that all Tesla app users get an invite. Maybe 2 months down the road, whatever. So when they are in Austin, they can try it on. But I do believe it's still going to be very slow. But we'll have that delivery, autonomous delivery, in a couple of days. That may be next week, right? That may be early next week, maybe even this weekend. They seem to have a preference to do these things on weekends rather than weekdays. Less traffic, less source of issues. So it could be as early as this Saturday or Sunday.
So you're saying by a couple months from now, I think you said something like that, you would expect it to expand to include all Tesla owners, maybe like that. What's that number in Austin? And then
and not only Austin, meaning anybody who comes to Austin, right? Anybody who comes. I mean, what would be really great is that anybody who comes to the shareholder meeting has the possibility to hail them. I mean, will there be enough cars around? Obviously not, but because remember, we're usually 1,000, 1,500, maybe sometimes even 2,000 guests. I mean,
by then,
I don't think it'll be enough.
So by October, yeah. And so how many cars do you think would be out there by the end of this year? You're thinking 2,000?
I don't think it's a matter of number of cars. I mean, they have enough cars to put now 1,000 cars into the system if they want to. It's a matter of monitoring the cars. I actually have a theory about the thumb position of the monitor. Yeah. Person. I think the button has multiple functions, but one is to alert the headquarters, the war room, whatever you want to call it, the picture we saw from Ashok, to now focus on this one. Right? So that, because obviously they had 10 cars up there and lots of other screens and whatever, but if somebody pushed the button, that put that video surveillance on priority.
Which explains why they were watching Herbert's car the whole time.
Yeah.
That's true. Right. By the way, just wanted to tell you, Herbert, there was only one red car and you had it at least once, right?
Yes, I did. I like that car. That was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great answer. Thank you for that. Let's go down the panel here. That's I don't know, Matt, are you going to push off the answer again? Or I was sorry.
I'll answer directly. Cern and I both did. I think I agree with a lot of what Alexandra just said, but I think one of the key gating factors to increasing this is like, when can you actually get rid of the safety supervisor? Because if you can get rid of the safety supervisor, then you can really rapidly expand within Austin, and then eventually, presumably, it wouldn't be too difficult to expand the geofence, and then just kind of repeat in a different city down the road. So I think that's one of the biggest unknowns right now is what will it take for Tesla to get comfortable enough to remove the safety supervisor. I suspect there's a lot of things they can do, with the AI, with the monitors in the car to say, okay, if the inference computer says I'm not quite certain exactly how to proceed from here, or at least this is looking slightly squirrely, I would imagine there's some way they could kind of flag that to have the equivalent of the the thumb on the door handle button, like Alexandra was saying. But that's a bit of speculation right now as to could they build out some automated system to kind of raise the level of monitoring that's needed. They're going to need to build out that capability in general. So I would imagine that's something they're working on pretty aggressively right now. But it's very hard to guess at timelines. So I guess if you were to force me to come up with a guess, I'd say maybe the geofence expands a little bit, more invites go out, and maybe you're at like 20 cars, but still with the supervisor for the next couple months. But my expectation and my hope would be that let's say by September you can get safety drivers or safety monitors out of the vehicles, and then that would enable a much more rapid expansion from there.
Yeah, my theory on the safety, first of all, don't call them a safety driver, please.
Observer.
They're a safety monitor, they're a safety passenger because they're not driving the cars. They're a button pusher. I think the reason what their role was in case there's a lot of Tesla enemies, and we know that there was planned events that they were trying to do to cause an accident, right? To show off this. If they could do that on the first day, you have a bunch of safety monitors that if something happened, they press the button and the car would stop, automatically stop, or, it's like that button we pressed. What was that? Turn, park now, or something like that. Take over now, or what was it, Alexandra? The button we would press that we tested a couple times.
Drop off? No, it was not drop off. It was.
Yeah, it starts with a T. But I can't remember now. I think that's what that was.
I think it was pull over.
Pull over. That's
pull
what
over.
right.
There you
pull
go.
Over.
No,
when you press pull over, but when you press that button, pull over, the hazard lights turn on, and the car finds a safe place to then pull over, and then the person that's out there will call you and ask you. Customer support will ask you what's going on. I think that's what that was. It's less about intervention. Of course, it's still there for intervention. Not saying that's not what it is, but it's mostly to prevent these things. So I think that they'll be there for a month.
Don't you think, Herbert, sorry to interrupt you, that whatever they signal by a push of the thumb to headquarter then intervenes. I mean, we've seen at headquarter they have wheels, they have obviously complete ways of being able to intervene. They don't use it until the situation arrives. I think they want to have the decision of what to do in a conflictual situation or in a dangerous situation directly reported and them intervening.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so thank you, Matt. What about you, Cern?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is share with you what I'd like to see rather than what I necessarily think will have happen.
Right.
I would like to see them add more vehicles to the fleet. I'd like to see them expand the geofenced area. That's all obvious, right? Particularly as people come in for the shareholder meeting, particularly as you have events like the F1 in Austin later this year. That's another opportunity to showcase the service, right, with a lot of out-of-town visitors. If I was running it, that would be a priority for me, is to get the system up and running to a larger degree to accomplish that. I would also like to see Tesla have a mechanism. They're receiving all kinds of feedback from people. I would like to see some evidence that feedback is being incorporated. And so that when you expand then the number of riders, you're only going to get more feedback. So they need a mechanism to be able to act on this feedback quickly and get more feedback and act on that quickly. I'd like to see that happen. And I'm confident that they'll get there. And then the final thing I want to see is Grok in the car.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be really helpful. I think it would make people a lot more comfortable with being in a driverless vehicle if they could talk to the vehicle, as strange as that sounds.
Yeah, and especially since we know now that Grok is in Optimus 3, right?
Yeah.
So the bridge between Grok and Tesla exists now. Between XAI and Tesla exists now. There is no doubt. I don't know how they did it. That's actually a question I would like to ask at the next shareholder meeting. Is there a contract? Is there, what's the exchange of information?
Good question.
What's happening here?
That's a great question. Okay. So Tesla turned a page, but investors haven't jumped on it yet. The stock is still flat, probably going to be flat till next year. Alexandra says Q4 next year. I guess so. Yeah. And then, but the bot's coming and everything's milestones are still being hit. And then we'll see what kind of milestones they do for Robotaxi by the end of this year. I think the numbers you said was 500 by the end of this year, Matt. That's a little low for me. I think it's going to be now 2,000 personally, because I was at that number. But after experiencing it myself, after using this system, after doing 10 rides, and then watching everybody else do it for the last several days, like I cannot think of anything except for possibly, which I don't have the number for, which is interventions, right? Is FSD good enough or not good enough to expand it to 1,000 cars? But what in terms of infrastructure, I don't know, right? But like, do they have enough safety passengers, safety monitors, they're called observers? Do they have enough of those? Because I do think that they'll have them for at least a month or two, primarily because we know that there's going to be a tax. That's what I think that they're preventing. And then there is, but what else did he need? The system, right? The command center, the app, being able to call a customer service person. I think that is scalable. All of that is scalable at this point. So I can't think of anything other than safety of the car. And, we did see a few hiccups, but they weren't, to me, critical interventions. So I don't think it's going to go beyond, a couple months, and then they're going to go to 1,000, but I don't think beyond maximum 2,000.
Before they roll it out to a larger group of users, meaning not only people like us testing it, because you went there with the clear motivation to test it, right? You didn't go just because you needed a drive from point A to point B.
We know a lot about the car. That's the thing. We are absolutely,
exactly.
We understand the car.
So,
we don't,
as opposed
to
just a stranger.
We're
owners and we're shareholders and we want this to work and we want to bring constructive criticism, but we don't want to, just blast it in either way. But before it goes to the more general public, who may be, like I said, also Tesla owners, but really need the car, really need a ride, I think they have to improve the user interface of the app.
Yeah,
I think the comments that came from Farzad and from Sawyer were very, very good on, what is missing here. You really feel this is a pre-generation app that is not yet completely optimized for daily use.
But it's an app, right? They can fix that. That's easy. That's not the hard part. I want to make a comment because somebody posted this, which I thought was a smart comment. This idea that, we're being hit by the media saying, Tesla rolled this out to just the fanboys, and it's very biased, the kinds of things that they're saying. And this guy points it and said, well, which is worse of a bias? The us who do a 4.5-hour live stream showing everything, or the article that's written and they have like a 2-second comment? Which is more biased?
Exactly. Of course it's more biased what the journalists did, and they're just pissed off that they didn't have first dips on all this information, because that's what they usually get. I did a post. I'm really proud of that one because I felt inspired. Any other company would have rolled this out with a PR company, and they would have had all the journalists, and there would have been champagne, and there would have been petit four and all the crap that they usually do. And it would have been for journalists, it would have been for institutional people, and it would have been cozy among them. And Tesla is the only company who did it for their retail shareholders and for their retail owners. And it did it for the people like you and me who, have spent thousands of hours studying this, trying to communicate on it. And this was a thank you, but it was also a recognition of who is important to them. It's us, their base that's important. And when I put that out, I didn't even think of Elon. And Elon replied with a heart, which I think, really which shows... I'm often talking about this. There's very special relationship between Elon and retail shareholders. He can count on us and we can count on him. And this was one of those moments where we could count on him. And I hate it when they say, oh, influencers were invited. We're not influencers. We're retail shareholders and we're owners of cars, and we're, nobody's here to influence anybody. That's not the goal of any of us. I don't, but when they treat Sawyer as an influencer, what an insult. Sawyer is the primary news source for anything Tesla. He's not an influencer. I know influencers who do, get dressed every day and get clicks for that, like me, right? But that's not what our Tesla activity is all around.
Yeah. Well said, Alexandra. That's good. I think we do need to talk about Q2. So we talked about the stock, Robotaxi Q2. It's boring, but let's turn to you, Matt. What do we expect with Q2? What is your exact numbers for production and delivery? What other things do you think that they're going to, share? It's generally accepted at this point, right, that it's going to be a bad quarter. Is it worse than Q1? Is it built in, or will people be shocked with the number and then stock will sell off?
So I've got a slightly worse number in there right now than I hope Tesla will actually produce. So I'm at just under 350,000 for my production deliveries. I do think they'll do slightly better than that, but not by a whole lot. And the kind of quick math, well, I'll just give you the bottom line answer right now with all the assumptions that I've got baked in there right now. It's about 31 cents in earnings per share. So really nothing to write home about. You could always have surprises on, any individual line item, but my sense is there was a lot that was dragging down automotive gross margin last quarter, specifically with the discounting of the old Model Ys, and then like the significant downtime for the lines as the new Model Y was ramping up. So I was initially expecting a much more significant increase in automotive gross margin, just as those things were in the rearview mirror. But since the Model Y kind of re-ramp was slower than I expected, and overall demand was a lot lower than I was expecting, I think the automotive gross margin improvement is going to be a bit more muted than I was initially expecting. So really nothing to write home about. I'm sure that's lower than where Wall Street is right now, but I'd love to be wrong, but it's my best estimate of where we'll end up.
Mm-hmm. Any other than the numbers, any kind of comments you think you're expecting, commentary, guidance for the year?
The one thing I'm actually, this is more of a question than any particular insight, but we've actually got the Shanghai mega factory ramping now, and it's possible that the revenue recognition in China might be slightly more accelerated than what we're seeing with US-based projects. US-based projects where you've got like a 24-month lead time and like all these like milestone payments, and interconnection is such a slow piece of the overall project. So we've got this whole accounting system that slowly recognizes the revenue over time, a year or more after the actual Megapack was manufactured. So you get this lag, which is working its way through the financials right now. China, as we all know, moves a lot faster, and so I'm curious now that we're starting to see some somewhat meaningful, not huge yet, but somewhat meaningful volumes out of the Shanghai Megapack factory. Will we see kind of an acceleration of that, and will they give any kind of guidance as to how those revenues are recognized? I suspect they won't, at least not for a long time, but that is something that's kind of in the back of my mind, and I would expect that the overall kind of however long, like if you think of like the weighted average like revenue life cycle, like how many months is it on average from like if you recognize, let's say 10% on like manufacturing completion or like delivery to customer, and 50% at testing, and then like an extra 40% at interconnect. If you weight all those different tranches together, maybe it ends up being 9 months or so, and I would guess that that's much more compressed in China.
Is it enough to counter a dip in vehicles?
Not in this quarter. This is more, this would help future quarters. They're just ramping up right now. I don't think they're going to be anything close to full capacity. I think my estimate on total gigawatt hours delivered is something close to 12. So that'd be, the Lathrop plant running at near full capacity, which is, 10 gigawatt hours per quarter, a little bit of Powerwall sprinkled in there, and then some, initial ramp from this Shanghai plant. So I don't think it's going to really move the needle too much quite yet.
If your numbers is actually what does happen, what ends up happening, what they report, is the stock going to fall because you're much worse than the estimates?
Well, we kind of saw this last quarter where, estimates were just continuing to fall as we got into earnings.
All right. Yeah.
And, when the bad earnings report, finally did come out, the stock didn't crater. So it's very hard to tell in any one of these situations because we have some, buy the rumor, sell the news, kind of things. Then we've got some, where it's the exact inverse of that. So the stock's in this bit of a waiting period. I mean, for all the reasons we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where there's this tug of war between the auto valuation and then the partial credit on, the autonomy and Optimus parts of the business. So really, I think it's ultimately which narrative is going to win the day, and maybe even what's going on with like macro and some other things. So my sense is like at 31 cents, like that's not great, but I mean, let's just say it was 60 cents. That would obviously be a huge surprise, and I would expect the stock to move on that. But ultimately, in like the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really change too much of where the real value of the company is. So I don't like this term, but I think Tesla really is a story stock right now because it's largely driven by whether you believe in this future that we're all talking about, or whether you believe the kind of naysayers that says it's just a car company.
Does anybody have any good things to say about Q2?
Well, it's possible energy is from the U.S. from Lathrop could be a surprise on the positive side. That business tends to be a little bit lumpy quarter to quarter, so Q2 could be a positive surprise there. Maybe not. Maybe it's Q3 that proves to be the big lump. So again, that's not something that's very easy to predict. So at least the trajectory in energy is favorable over time, but whether that comes through this quarter or not, I'm not sure. And frankly, I don't really care. That's not really anything that I'm particularly worried about in terms of how the energy business does each quarter. But yeah, I'm hard pressed to come up with anything that's positive that I'm expecting in Q2 that could be a big positive surprise. Clearly, the auto business is struggling, right? I think the Q2 numbers are going to be pretty weak. It's even possible that they're weaker than what Matt has just talked about. And so again, I'm not particularly worried about that because the future of the company is not in that business, right?
Let me ask all of you, if we kind of come in at this expectation roughly where I just laid out, really bad deliveries next week, let's call it 350,000. Is the market already expecting that, or and are Tesla enthusiasts already expecting that? My sense is the Tesla enthusiasts this time around have their expectations pretty well in check.
They're
in Q1, I think it was a bit of a surprise that we weren't going to be at 450,000 units. This time around, I think people are pretty sober about expectations,
or that they don't care. I honestly think that transition has already happened. That a new book has been written, as we've been saying. Even though the numbers are tiny, it's the fact that it's working. It's here. It's going to scale.
Yeah, if we're looking at milestones for things, let's say you start up a new business and you don't have any revenue, and let's say you don't have an existing business, right? So let's just say the Tesla auto business doesn't exist, and we're just looking at Tesla as an AI company that's developing Robotaxi and the humanoid bot. Initially, as Matt said, it's a story stock. There's no revenue. So you're following a development milestones, and what we saw this week is a huge development milestone of actually rolling out a service. Okay, it's a small rollout, whatever, but from here, what matters is then how it scales. So that's an important milestone, though. It would help support any valuation that you had on that business, even at this small scale. You've taken a concept and you've made it real, right? And again, a very, very, very small way. But that's how big things start. They start off very, very small. From that standpoint, I think it's a huge positive in terms of the valuation for the AI side of the business. And hopefully over the course of this year, we see more news on the development of Optimus. And as Elon indicated, I think it was yesterday, that the third version of Optimus he's excited about. I forget what his exact words were. So, hopefully we get to see more of what Optimus is capable of and those development milestones, because that puts more support to the valuation of the AI part of the business.
Okay, this is great. Let's get to the next segment. One of the things we started doing a couple shows ago is quick questions, rapid fire questions. This is what we covered so far. We're going to get to the quick questions. People like this. And I'm going to, I think, debate Alexandra right now. Where are the new vehicles? Alexandra says earlier, she said October.
Yeah.
possibly delayed till October, just in time with
Again,
the.
listen to what I said. I mean, they could, if production numbers and delivery numbers don't matter anymore, if end of September is not an event for Tesla anymore, it could be at any moment. But it will obviously have an impact on Model 3 and Model Y sales. So I think they will release it when they're ready to deliver it. It's really going to be very, very short. They will release it, and you can order it, and you will get it in the weeks that follow.
I agree with that. But whether it's going to be delayed,
ready for that.
Mhm.
But to be ready for that, you have July, where they are closing some lines to retool, right? And then you need, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks at least to be able to ensure that now you're ready to have deliverable cars. There we are in September. So the question for me is, will they then just launch it, or will they wait for the quarter end to get that over with and then launch it beginning of October? I have no insight whether it's October. I just think that would make sense if that's still important, right? If it is September, be my guest.
Okay. Yeah. So let's see. I think earlier you also said that we knew already that it might be delayed. So as far as I remember, and I know, Tesla and Elon communicated in the last quarter announcements, in the all the communication they've ever said, they have not budged on it will be on the first half of this year.
Well, that's over. We're
True.
Friday.
We're a Friday, so I agree. I'm not saying that it's going to be the first half of this year. I agree with it's over. But this idea that it'd be delayed. The reason is that, number one, this is built on the existing Model Y framework. They've been working on it. So this part of the reason why Q2 could be low is because they have been retooling already. There was that announcement that Cybertruck and the Model Y is going to be shut down for a week. And I think that, and then I think Joe Tegmar found through some drone shots, right, that there are these second new kind of exit to the Giga Texas with ramps. They also found lots of semis that are parked there that they never saw before that are ready to carry vehicles. So for me, it's like, yes, it's coming out of the Model Y lines. It's like, so it's not this, it's a new vehicles, but it's not this, big thing that could be delayed. I think it's still going to be on track. Now, I don't think it's going to be first half this year, but I don't know. I'm going to agree with you that it's going to be delayed till October. That seems too far.
July 7th, Herbert.
Where'd you come up with that number?
But how about
that date?
Monday after the holiday.
Well, how about August 1st, given this strange image this morning of this number with 420 digits?
Okay.
I mean, let me show that. Yeah.
What is this? Okay, how does that then come into?
Well, I mean, it is a number, an existing number with 420 digits. That's a prime number. It also, the way he lined it up, made the sign of Grok. But I mean, Elon doesn't post things like that without another meaning, right? Or maybe I'm wrong, but
so
you should zoom in a little bit so you see it better, because you see the Grok exactly. So it's 8s and 1s.
August 1st. Oh, whoa, you're brilliant. Okay.
I mean, that
there's a zero here, but okay.
They didn't need much of my brilliance. Where do you see a zero? Where's zero?
Up here, first, second number.
Oh, I didn't even see the zero. See how little brilliant I am?
But yeah, it's almost all 8 1s. Interesting.
It's the number of blocks that'll be made before year end, Herbert.
There's something in here. This is not a normal post. I mean, first of all, you have to write it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to configure it that
good point.
There is this Grok symbol in it.
I
mean, how in the world does your brain have to work that you come up with this? So
it's interesting enough on its own, though, that that'd be worthy of a post. If you weren't even trying to come up with some hidden meaning, like, and what are the odds that like he knew about this number or somehow figured it out, and that also coincides with when is the perfect launch date for the new vehicle. So my take would be that's just a interesting post on its own. Like, for that to be a prime number with 420 digits and for that to coincide with like what
You wait.
Tesla's doing, then I
You
will just
wait.
concede that we live in a simulation if that's the case.
I checked. It's a Friday, so that may help you. I checked immediately whether it was a Thursday, and I said, okay, it's a Friday, so maybe I'm wrong.
What's going to happen is August 1st is going to roll around. Nothing's going to happen, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's got to be August 18th because it was 818."
Ah.
Yeah. Do you guys remember the last time this happened? I can't remember.
yeah.
What was it?
remember.
9/12?
December 9th. Yeah.
This
December
9/12 first, and then there's become 12/9. But it was 9/12 that somehow people thought that was when we're going to do the 3-for-1 stock split. And then all of a sudden it was like everybody kept finding clues, and then it strengthened. Everybody really, really thought at that point 9/12 of that year was going to be the date. And of course, nothing happened. Elon posted this, and it looks like it's a 9 here and a 12 there.
And just to Matt's
All
point
these
about
evil images. Yeah, go ahead.
Matt's point about the prime number, prime numbers with 420 digits is kind of cool, but the largest prime in the world has 41 million digits. So we're well beyond, prime numbers in the hundreds. I remember when my father, who was a mathematician, got his first computer, he had it cranking out prime numbers, and every now and then on the dining room table, our printer would fire up to life and a new prime number would come out. This is back in the early days of the personal computer. So we're at prime numbers now at 41 million digits. So, why did Elon post this? I think this is a good question. It certainly wasn't the significance of this prime number because, again, a prime with 420 digits is no big deal these days.
Wow, this explains a lot, Cern. Your father was a mathematician.
Yep.
And then earlier before the call, we were debating who's the bigger nerd between Matt and Cern. I think Cern, you might have won. Okay, come on, guys. I'm gonna get hit hard.
Let me reinstate that. What do you have to think prior to making this post? How do you get there? I mean, I have no clue because I'm not in that sphere. But there we have two nerds. Would you think an evening about finding a 420-digit prime number, and then it comes out with 8 zeros and a lot of ones, and then do it, and then it makes also the logo of Grok?
That part of it's pretty cool.
Right. It's pretty cool, but it's very unlikely that it's just coming to your mind like that.
Elon does recycle a lot of stuff that he gets from other people, with memes in particular. But my guess would be, somebody on the Grok team kind of figured this out and just like, hey, look at this, it's our logo. And he's like, oh, I got to post that. That would be my best guess, because I don't think Elon's was spending 4 hours trying to rearrange, where do I put the brakes in? If he's doing that, I'm like, man.
No, he's not. He's laser focused.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't think, it was, him over a glass of Chianti trying to figure out how to rearrange these lines here.
But the Chianti is important in all.
It is.
All right. Next quick fire question. I think we answered it earlier. What are the next stock catalysts? I think you answered it, Alexandra. What about the other two?
Well, so I would say, I think I kind of addressed this with the expansion of the Robotaxi, both the cities and the fleet being catalyst, because then you can start to model out, how big is this revenue stream going to be? How quickly will it expand? And then you're also kind of eliminating those nagging kind of bear questions of there were some vehicles with LiDAR. Do you actually need that to do your mapping? How scalable is your approach actually? You do have some of these, I think, legitimate nagging questions that need to be removed, as well as give an indication of the how quickly this expansion is going to go, so that your 2027 numbers can look a lot more attractive than if you're maybe Adam Jonas and trying to be a little conservative and say we'll get to 1,000 vehicles by 2027. So, and I'm not saying those are his numbers. I just, I've seen enough of his analysis where he's he gets the big picture and then is an order of magnitude smaller than what the first principles thinking would lead you to believe. So, I think it really is just the kind of steady rollout of those milestones on the autonomy front. New vehicle could help, but I suspect probably not.
Good answer. Yeah, Cern?
Yeah, I'm not particularly worried about new vehicles. I think we're past that point. Certainly, it would be a boost to the company's earnings and profitability in the short term. But I would hate the company to spend all this time and effort just for a sugar high over the next few quarters. Um, you know, and I know a lot of people want Tesla to do that, and a lot of people want a more affordable vehicle. Awesome, I appreciate that, and I hope you get it. I hope that you get the vehicle that you're looking for from Tesla. I think Alexandra and I are in the camp that Tesla one day really shouldn't sell vehicles to anybody. That there's far more profitable business opportunities than selling a car and making maybe $5,000 a vehicle. That's kind of a waste of the bright minds that are at Tesla. Now, if there are no other EV companies out there, then I suppose, yeah, okay, Tesla will have to sell vehicles to other people. If Rivian or whatever doesn't survive and you can't buy an EV from someone, then I suppose Tesla should continue to make those vehicles and sell them if there's demand for it. The big catalyst that I'm excited about is the development of the humanoid bot. That, for me, is the ultimate thing for Tesla. And so the more that we see and learn about what Tesla is doing there this year, that gets me more excited about the future of the company. We've seen some of the other bot makers talk about their development. Figure AI came up with a video that was an hour long that showed their bot working. I would like Tesla to be a bit more public about the capabilities of what their bot can do. Now, I also understand from a competitive standpoint that may not be wise, and so I respect that. But at the same time, that would be helpful. I think it would give shareholders, again, the story about moving and becoming an AI company. It's important, I think, to bring us along in that development to the extent they can without giving away what they're doing or
I'm
giving
very
away to
happy that they
competitors.
don't show anything. I'm
Yeah.
very happy. The least they show, the better we're off, because they clearly said the first AI days they got completely copied. So that's the last thing you want, especially now that the race is on. I'm not saying I see anybody out there who has the capacity and knowledge to manufacture in mass these bots, but that doesn't mean that other people won't come and steal ideas. So I'm very happy. The least they show, the better we're off.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. But from a stock catalyst perspective, to me, that would be an important milestone if we're looking for catalysts in the short term.
Yeah, I agree with you. Earlier I said I don't think that the stock will move at all. First of all, none of us here, we haven't given any forecasts. We don't give numbers. We don't know. But if somebody asks me what is the thing that could move the stock, I don't know. Most catalysts don't. The only catalyst we know for sure that moves the stock is earnings growth. That's the only one. Every time you show numbers go up, then eventually stock follows at some point. But I do think that I don't think the Robotaxi will do it this year. However, I think that bots could. Imagine when they show you 2,000 bots, 1,000 bots working at Tesla's factory, all doing useful work. If they're able to do that by the end of this year, just that image alone, I think it's easier for those. Remember, we talked at the beginning of the show that there's a group of people who are willing to invest prior to earnings, who are willing to show that. That's a lot easier for them to visualize and understand that this could be a really big market. So maybe. Last question here is end of year key metrics. You guys, both of you pushed, but I'm going to bring up the question again. What are the key metrics by the end of this year that you'll expect?
Number of
for them to report?
robotaxis, number
Okay.
of bots working in the factory. I don't care about how many cars are sold. I couldn't care. I agree with Matt. It would be great if you understand energy in China, because that would then scale much quicker than the energy numbers we see here in America. And that's it. We're in the phase where energy, robotaxi, and bots are going to take over. It's
Isn't
not
that crazy?
about cars.
That's
Yeah.
part of the point, isn't it? That by the end of this year, there should be, whether or not they're line items under financial, that you guys are correct. They probably won't do that quite yet, but they will be numbers that they will share, hopefully. Are you guys going to add anything? Or did Alexandra hit it all?
Matt is looking after his 7 children.
Come on,
I
Matt.
was actually just going to agree with everything Alexandra said. The production and deliveries, they don't really matter. Like, sure, it'd be great if we, had like year-over-year growth, but like actually, if you do the math, it doesn't change the valuation in a fundamental way. What does is how fast the pace of expansion of Robotaxi and especially Optimus is. So I think Optimus actually could be the kind of dark horse that we know about, but a lot of people are maybe only focused on Robotaxi and they think Optimus is like 2 years after that from really making a difference. But I think it's going to scale at a really insane rate. And I think by later this year, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we've got some pretty epic stuff if Tesla has some pretty epic stuff to share with us by then.
Okay, but to be clear, just so that I we're not saying that the chance that a humanoid robot would actually be production ready, that is able to do useful work at a factory by the end of this year, is really, really that would be a major accomplishment. None of the bot companies, maybe not even Tesla, is able to produce these bots. You see these demos, everybody assumes right away, oh my God, look how great they are. They're ready to go. They're not. It's all about downtime. It's about how durability of the actuators. These things have not been proven that they're able to be done. And of course, the brains, the useful work kind of thing. And it's important to have like quality, right? So it's one thing to actually watch it doing some activity, but it's another thing to actually measure how many times it makes mistake, how quickly does it move, and so forth. So by the end of this year, it would be a huge win if they're able to do that. I'm not saying that it's going to be done, but I want to set expectations for people. Don't think that human or robots is already done deal and it's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, Herbert. I would totally agree with that. But that said, that is the future of the company. It's interesting just being here in Austin and being in a Robotaxi and observing people. Most people on the street, most people in cars are completely oblivious that the car next to them, the car passing them, the car in front of them, the car behind them is not driven by a human. Mm-hmm. The other day I was in a Robotaxi and there was a bus driver who happened to notice the vehicle next to him didn't have a driver. And he gave the most hilarious, shocked face I've ever seen. Uh-huh. And that's the only person I've ever seen so far in my so far 7 rides that I've had that had any kind of reaction like that. So with Optimus, you can't miss it. If you see an Optimus, you are going to be, your mind's going to be blown if you've never seen this thing before. We sort of always talk about, Chat GPT moment for Tesla. I don't think it's Robotaxi. People don't even notice it because it behaves like a perfectly well-driven car, right? If it was driving like a maniac on the road, then yeah, everybody would notice. But it doesn't. It just fits right in. It just looks like another car. It doesn't have all the knobs and stuff that Waymo has. People notice those vehicles, but Tesla's Robotaxi just blends right in and operates normally. But the humanoid bot, once people see that on the street or in a store or in a factory or wherever they encounter it, that is going to be mind-blowing for people. And that's going to wake up, I think, a lot of people beyond just the community of people like us that are following it closely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cern. That was great. First of all, thank you, Alexandra. You are the best. I'm so happy that you joined us. Of course, you managed the live stream that we did last weekend. And today, you were on fire. Thank you for your answers. And then we had these 2 analysts who actually have spreadsheets. You said it. They were debating amongst themselves, guys. Don't hit me hard. They were asking themselves who's the bigger nerd. But it's great for us as Tesla enthusiasts to actually hear from these guys because they do the work. They actually write up spreadsheets and they have the analysis. So appreciate both of you, Matt. And you're from Rebellionaire, and you got Cern from brilliantdevice.net. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Herbert.
Thank you, Herbert.
Thanks, Herbert.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.